Welcome back to Municipal Matters here on Cogeco TV. I'm your host, York Bellsmith. Joining us this week is Municipality of Port Hope Mayor Bob Sanderson. Bob, the Fire Services Working Group presented an interim report to Council back on January 3rd. We have video of that we'll take a look at and we'll come back and discuss.
The Fire Services Working Group representatives met at their respective stations to canvass the volunteer firefighters to devise a list of both current and futuristic needs of their stations and response areas. There's a total of 87 issues identified of all three stations. The issues were deemed either priority, health, safety, and future needs. Top priorities for Station 1, personal protective room. Presently, the apparatus bay is used for storage of PPE and used as a dressing area where the PPE is exposed to exhaust fumes every time a truck starts. Again, the PPE is the personal protective equipment that the firefighters use. Item 2, the male-female washrooms. Presently, there are no separate washrooms for female and male. This is accomplished by hanging a sign on the door to identify who's using it. Presently, firefighters have to go home to shower, taking whatever contaminates they have been exposed to home to their families. Item 3 is self-contained breathing apparatus maintenance room request. Presently, the SCBAs are cleaned in a laundry room in the apparatus bay or one station and a kitchen sink. This is a life-saving device and needs to be treated accordingly. Item 4, the laundry room. The laundry room, presently, the washers being used are for residential use and do not wash and dry them fast enough compared to a commercial unit designed for the application. Presently, the PPEs are washed and hung on chairs to dry or wherever they can hang them. The downfall is that they have to respond to another emergency before they are dry. They have to borrow another firefighter's, which may not fit properly as each firefighter PPE is mandated fitted to his or her size. You may think, why not just have a second set for each firefighter, which is a great idea, except that they cost $2,200 each, which for less, that translates into $154,000 for 70 firefighters. These items are areas that require immediate action as they fall under mandated requirements, not optional programs. Station 2, welcome. Items 1 to 4 are all the same issue as Station 1. The upgraded HVAC system, electric to propane. Presently now the bay is heated with electric heaters, and they run virtually 24 hours a day. When the doors open, all the heat goes outside and the heaters still continue to run. And again, without the heat on, the trucks have to be maintained at a particular temperature, so it has to be, again, this site does not have an emergency power supply, so it would go dark again if in fact there is a power outage. The apparatus floor drainage system does not meet the current environmental standards. And again, item 8, the improved mechanical vehicle exhaust system is an issue here as well. The system pump replacement, the existing pump is not large enough to create enough flow to act as a water source. They have a very large cistern, which can be considered to be a water source for fire accreditation. Again, item 10, same thing, upgraded equipment. Recommended immediate action plan, again, recommend to council an efficient renovation plan to address the health and safety concerns addressed in the top priorities list, using current facilities in the most effective and economical manner. Identify a systematic plan to be used to address the immediate concerns identified to ensure that the effective and seamless upgrades are completed with no interruption to current service levels. You will see issue papers coming forward from the chief in regards to these issues.
87 issues. Seems to be quite a few issues. I do want to mention there too that Station 3 was the same needs as Station 2, same issues. So 87 issues.
Yeah, it's interesting. We could talk a lot on this one because I think it's really an important issue. The primary thing when we put this together a while ago the working group, everybody thought, that, well, it's a political hot potato, and you shouldn't do it, and it'll open up wrong discussions. It hasn't. We've got the community involvement, we've got a very good working group, and we have a new fire chief. And the primary objective here is to find out how can the fire department, be both efficient and meet all safety requirements. We have a volunteer group, and we're, in my opinion, probably 15 years behind. I've
Right.
toured all the facilities, right, and had lots of interaction, and every firefighter has been interviewed, all right, by the working group. So there's been a lot of involvement, which is why you get 87, issues brought forward.
Right.
But as Brian Stacey, one of the head of that working group, indicates, what our primary concern should be, and I hope will be, is the safety and welfare of the, firemen.
Absolutely.
Yep, and we're not really in code, but morally we're not doing a good job, which is as important. And it's, when I talked to, I think it was in Station 3, and I was doing the tour with the chief, right, and talking to the firefighters, and we said, well, we're going to look to implement some changes, and they're showing, and one firefighter said, oh yeah, sure, heard the same thing 15 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And I said, that fair enough.
Yeah.
It's been neglected, and it cannot be neglected, and it cannot be a budgetary item from a resistance perspective. This is things I think that we need to do. And we need to do it properly. It's not that everything can't be done in a year, but I think we both have to budget and plan for the stages requirement, which is first, health and welfare.
Right.
Right. Secondly, the safety, both on the job and otherwise equipment-wise. Right. And then facilities. Are we located in the right place, and what do we need? The Station 3 up in Garden Hill is tight. The other stations, I think we can manage what we need to do with modifications. Station 3, one of the things we're looking at is how could we get more space to meet the requirements, put the equipment where it needs to be.
Right.
And that'll be an outcome of it too. There'll be recommendations. And the libraries up there, maybe that's an option to use some of that space, those kind of things. But I think the primary thing is this group is, again, another example of a great working group following a very proper agenda and doing a great presentation to identify to council some needs. And now if council chooses not to move forward, I say shame on us, but we need to look after our people.
What exactly is council being asked to do? Is this is I guess setting aside budget money for it? Is it all about money? Is
It will, because that report hasn't come forward yet. So we know what the needs are, but we don't know what, well, we have some idea of the priorities, obviously, health and safety and what have you, but we don't know the budgetary requirements to do that or the timelines.
Right.
And I would see, hopefully in this budget this year we could look after, the human requirements and get into code. I would even say I'd love to see some of the physical requirements. We did put, I think, $60,000 a year away last year to look at Station 1 modifications, so we can put the administration back in that area.
Right.
Where the chief would like to have it. And I think with some physical changes and very efficient ones, parking on the street is dangerous for the firefighters coming. They park on the street. Some have had their mirrors knocked off by cars going by.
Well, dangerous not only for the volunteer firefighters, but for other traffic
For
on
everybody.
Ontario Street. That it's that's widespread. That affects everybody.
Yeah, and I can't see anybody who says we shouldn't be doing those things with a high requirement like fire. I mean, everybody is worried about fire, and in older communities, I think we're even more vulnerable. So
Yes,
so
absolutely.
look at the core downtown, fires in barns and in the rural areas. So I think the group is doing a great job. I think it behooves council to take their recommendations seriously and to budget them.
Right.
I mean, I always say, you can tell me what your priorities is, show me your budget. If it's not in the budget, then obviously you don't play the political game, tell me it's a priority for you, because it's not.
All of the issues, at least that we saw mentioned there, aren't going to come cheap. I mean, there'll be probably a pretty hefty price tag to some. Where do you see opposition coming from when this is such an essential, such a vital service that has the potential of affecting everybody?
It'll come from those councillors, I guess, who don't want to see taxes go up. That's their primary objective, and I'm hoping that is a secondary objective. Bricks and mortar we can, have opposing opinions on, but when it comes to looking after our citizens' health, safety, those kind of things I think we should be, having a consensus here. We won't like the numbers. 15
Right.
years of, cutting and saving, and as that firefighter said, sure, we'll wait and see. I said, yeah, exactly. That's the attitude you should have. I can promise you anything, but until I deliver it, it's just wind.
I find it kind of shocking that there's times and that it happens that their equipment hasn't had time to dry before another call comes in, and that talk about changing equipment with other firefighters, and I mean, it seems like everything that's on this list could directly impact the citizens of the municipality.
Well, it does, and we've seen a resurgence of volunteers also, and that is, I think, a reflection of, a little bit more professional on part of the municipality, appreciation. I mean, we have a firefighters appreciation thing, and I like good food, and some of these appreciations, I go look at the food and went, I'm not sure we really appreciate them. They should eat a little bit better. So we put a little bit more, funding into those kind of activities, build morale, culture, those kind of things. As I said, these are the values that smaller communities have, and I think we will support them well, but not until they're identified and the budget applied.
Was this group put together at all to look at how many fire stations we have or moving, or is it just all about what the issues that were addressed here?
It wasn't off the table, but not at the front. Right, at this point in time, we are adamant that we do need the 3. The debate previous about centralizing one and all that kind of stuff, there's no point in raising that at this point.
Have there been issues in the past that brought up that discussion in the first place? I know we talked about this a couple of times. Like, what is the issue? I haven't heard of anything on the street that the placement of the fire stations right now has been an issue.
I don't think it is either. In fact, I think there's some advantages to it. But as the community grows and those locations change, is that going to be the same? And then you look at access, particularly, say, in the urban area, to the 401, which we respond to the down core area. How do they get there, and what time response? And the new chief is going through all that data as well. And I think a lot of people would have felt that putting the new station up by the police station was right. I don't have an answer for that. I just say it's water under the bridge right now. Let's deal with what we have, and let's look after people first. And over the next few years, we'll sort the other stuff out. But I don't see us that we should be building a $2-3 million, building when we've got functional ability now.
Right.
And we've got some equipment that needs to be replaced, which gets into the proposal we did last night, talking about making fire services one of the infrastructure requirements. That's why, because it's extremely expensive, and small communities can't keep buying $600,000 pumper trucks and keep doing this without help. Yeah.
Right. We are going to talk about that discussion from last night. The importance here I see is the firefighters themselves, the male and the female, and it stood out to me too that they don't have separate washroom facilities and showers there. They got to go home and shower. That's, I don't know, frankly, a little shocking.
Well, it's unacceptable, basically. I don't find it shocking, but they're the firefighters and all the volunteer use in all kind of areas. They're male and female. And they need those facilities, to be separate. And I don't even know why we would hesitate.
Right.
And I honestly don't know why it hasn't been done in the past. These are not new issues. They've been outstanding for a long time.
Right.
So I think it behooves this council, to take a firm stand on this and move it forward, independent of the cost.
Now, the police went through this, with their old station, the same kind of issues that, of course, got resolved with the brand new station, but I don't know what it would take in the stations that exist now to change those facilities.
Not a lot, not as much as people think, because I think we have the space certainly in Station 1. There used to be some apartments, so their chief is putting together a plan there and getting quotes on that. The Garden Hill, a little bit different, but there's land, so we think we can modify that. Station 3 is a little bit more of a challenge, but we have the opportunity there because, as I said, the library is there as well. Is that, not to get into the library thing over the fire situation, but we're looking at, I'd really like to see the Canton building used more.
Right.
Right, and it's fairly central to the community. It was a big investment for, the rural area. And one of the things, quite frankly, we would look at is it an option to move the library to the Canton facilities, free up that space, and for a very, minimal cost, apply all the firefighting requirements to that.
Right.
And it's got the recreational facilities and stuff as well. And that would require a whole bunch of public input and what have you, but we're looking at all those options. And what's the best economic output?
Right. What's the next step for this interim firefighters group?
Get the report forward with the budget, right, and get council approval to move forward specifically on the issues that have the highest priority relative to safety and welfare of the firefighters, and at the same time start to incorporate the requirements in the physical structures themselves. We're expanding the parking on Station 1 by clearing some land area and giving them access so we can get them off the street at that point in time.
Right.
Yeah. So,
When does council expect to hear back with some hard figures?
well, hopefully in the next week.
Yeah, that fast?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're getting into budget discussions
Right.
next week, and our budget should be approved and finalized first week in February. And as in all things, I also am very adamantly supporting that we have contingency funds. We're in a time of flux and change, and any business, if you don't have some funds available to you for investing, we don't do it. We get a surprise. It's a $50,000 requirement on street lights. And we're going, oh my gosh, we never planned that, and we didn't know something would break down. I go, we shouldn't have to change a priority from one area that was important to one that we didn't think was going to happen. So
Right.
no business should continue without having the resources to back themselves up.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the discussion last night for the municipal fire services be considered critical infrastructure.
Yep, and that's not just a standalone for our municipality. I think there's a large number of municipalities who are on this bandwagon, and we are too. As I said, the firefighting requirements and the services required to prevent and look after municipalities are very high, beyond the ability of many communities. So the responsibility is being downloaded by the province, which requires investment, but they're not helping us, right? And we're kind of saying, well, with all the infrastructure required, we should consider it an infrastructure, like it's a requirement, of the community, just as sewers and water is.
Right.
And if we can get that changed, then some of that infrastructure funding, I think, could help, particularly smaller communities, meet proper, prevention and fire requirements. So that's pushing that forward to the government, and hopefully, with enough of us doing that, we'll get that support.
It's kind of surprising, again, a lot of surprises in this part of our conversation that it isn't already considered critical infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I go, what? Yeah, really? Okay, yeah. So if these communities are going to buy new trucks and we're looking at our capital expenditure, our assets, we're not going to survive.
Right.
And then we have to maybe expand, to things that we don't want to do. And then we're going to become like all the suburbia of Toronto, which takes away our ability to be a small community. So I see it as a bigger picture of going, we should have the ability to sustain ourselves, sustain the requirements, but if you keep pushing on us and downloading without any significant help, given that we're 10 years behind on infrastructure anyway. I mean, the latest fiasco, honestly, the government's telling us we have to put on our transit system an announcement of location. Well, if people in Port Hope getting on the bus don't know where they are, I've got an issue with that.
Absolutely.
But we have to. We're going to put in, $300,000 into an announcement where I think, the bus driver could say, we're at Walton and Mill, just in case you didn't know.
Well, you would think that could be handled that way with the bus driver making the announcement, turning around, looking over your shoulder.
That's generally what happens now.
Exactly.
And if somebody misses their stop, the bus driver usually knows them and says, Harold, you need to get off here, you know that. Oh yeah. Like
Sure.
it's the community involvement somehow starts to get lost in bureaucracy and there's an expense. It drives me crazy.
Right. We got a lot more to get to as Municipal Matters continues with Municipality of Port Hope Mayor Bob Sanderson after the break on Cogeco TV.